24 hours to go. That book's for beginners. I can't wait till time to download. That book's for beginners. Google Play and Stitcher, such a wide array. Here are Chris and Gerry to make your bad book pay. Hear their rhymes and reasons if they are okay. Oh. Bad books for beginners. Bad books for beginners.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of TBU's Bat Books for Beginners, episode 177. My name is Gerry.
And I'm Chris.
And we are your hosts.
On Bat Books for Beginners, we will examine story arcs with Batman and related characters. We'll give you the historical background of the book, break down the plot and the art, and give you our opinions so you can decide for yourself if they're worth a read.
Today's Bat Book Chris and I are covering is Outsiders, Checkmate, Checkout. Chris, tell us a little bit about this book.
Thank you very much, Gerry. Hey, and I love the sounds that you bring into the intro and the outros. Thank you, my friend.
Woohoo!
Hello, Bat fans. Thank you for downloading and spending some of your time with us today. Outsiders/Checkmate Checkout is a 144-page soft trade cover paperback that was cover dated way back on January 2008, and that was cover priced at $14.99. This book reprints one story that was depicted over 6 issues that alternated between the titles Checkmate, the second series, issue numbers 13 through 15, and The Outsiders, the third series, issue numbers 47 through 49. The original 6 issues were cover dated June through September 2007 and had a cover price back then of $2.99. Online vendors have the individual issues and the trade paperback significantly less than the cover price, which can be yours for as little as $3.74 for a used copy to as much as $8 for a new copy. Yeah, according to mycomicshop.com, this trade paperback did go through a second and subsequent printings, which makes me wonder why. Oops, I better not spoil any more. According to our crack research staff, these individual issues appear to be available on Comixology. Per usual, for our creative teams, I'm going to go off my memory and some online resources. For our writers, we had 2 co-writers on this story. First up is Greg Rucka. We've mentioned him on our previous podcasts. Rucka was born in 1969 in San Francisco. In the interest of time, I'll just note some of his many mainstream credits in broad brushstrokes. Most recently, he wrote the first 25 issues of Wonder Woman during DC Comics Rebirth. Also, on the acclaimed pre-Rebirth run of Batwoman, the story arcs Batman Bruce Wayne, Murderer, and Batman Bruce Wayne, Fugitive, and Batman Death of the Maidens, which Gerry and I reviewed on a previous podcast. Yep. Rucka won a 2010 GLAAD Media Award for his work on Detective Comics, which involved Batwoman, and he's also won Eisner Awards for his past work on the title Gotham Central. Judd Winick is the other writer. He's a writer who's had his works examined on our show, so again, we won't have an extensive bio here. Winick first gained attention in the public eye when he appeared as a cast member on MTV's The Real World in 1994. Winick is a GLAAD Media Award winner himself for his work on The Green Lantern in the early 2000s. Winick also got media attention for his work on Green Arrow, in which he took the character Mia Darden, who adopted the sidekick role of Speedy, and having her have HIV. So she was an HIV-positive character with a prominent role in that particular title. Winick was also responsible for resurrecting the Jason Todd character under the name The Red Hood. He wrote the screenplay for the 2010 animated movie for DVD, Batman Under the Red Hood, based on his prior comic book story of the same name back in 2005. Now, with respect to Batman-related titles, Judd Winick also worked on Catwoman and Batwing around 7 years ago when DC Comics was still in its New 52 period. Now, currently, Judd Winick is on a book tour, which includes a future stop in my bailiwick, to promote his book called High-Low 4, Waking the Monsters, which is aimed at kids in middle grades. Judd Winick created this now New York Times bestselling series when his then 7-year-old son asked to read his work. The stories feature a young boy named DJ who encounters the mysterious High-Low, a boy that fell from the sky, and their adventures and encounters with robots and aliens. Now, for our pencilers and inkers, we had Joe Bennett and Jack Jadson on Checkmate, and then we had Matthew Clark and Art Thibbert on the Outsiders title. And the latter two also provided the artwork for the trade paperback. Joe Bennett was born Benedito Jose Nascimento and is from Brazil. His credits also include The Amazing Spider-Man in the late 1990s and lots of work for DC around this period that we're covering right now. He worked on Checkmate as well as 52 and Birds of Prey. Matthew Clark is based in Portland, Oregon. He's also worked on Marvel's Comics Ghost Rider and more recently Bloodshot over for Valiant Comics. And you can check his work on the website MatthewClarkArtist.com. Now over on Amazon.com, this trade paperback got a rating of 4.3 stars out of 5 based on 8 customer reviews.
Wow.
Yeah, and over on Goodreads.com, this has a rating of 3.48 out of 5 based on 48 reviews. But where will Gerry and I rank this? Stay tuned and keep listening. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Gerry.
Thanks, Chris. So we're going to talk about this story a little bit more after a few messages from some of our friends.
Sawate. My name is Stella, and I am the host of Batgirl to Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. Batgirl to Oracle is a podcast dedicated to Barbara Gordon, the first woman to hold the mantle of Batgirl for an extended period of time, roughly 1967 to 1988. The goal of Batgirl to Oracle is to examine the character's history from her first appearance as Batgirl and continuing through her tenure as Oracle. Each episode looks at a vintage issue of Detective Comics or Batman, as well as other books like Justice League and Freedom Fighters, and modern issues of Batgirl and Birds of Prey. I also keep track of news involving Batgirl and other members of the Bat family, and I have a revolving series of segments like Babs in the Tube, which highlights appearances of Babs in TV and film, Shipper Spotlight, which looks at a variety of comic and pop culture couples, gives their history, and determines whether they are hot or not, Reading with Stella, which could be described as an audio drama, or just me reading a book that relates to Babs or doesn't, and of course, the mainstay literature recommendation. I have been blessed to interview writers Scott Beatty and Chuck Dixon on their Batgirl Year 1 work, Brian Q. Miller on his Batgirl run, Dwayne Swarzynski and Christy Marks on their separate Birds of Prey work, and the creators and actors of the Batgirl Spoiled, the web series. I hope to interview more creators and actors in the future. My goal, most importantly, is to make a fun, entertaining, and thoughtful show that people enjoy and from which they learn. Find the show online at thebatmanuniverse.net and iTunes, and follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at Batgirl to Oracle. Thank you, and fly on, Babs lovers.
Welcome back. Here is the story of Outsiders, Checkmate, Checkout. First, a little bit of background for those who aren't familiar with the setup. Checkmate is a government agency which is part of Task Force X, the same group as the Suicide Squad is. It consists of two groups. The White Group, which is the intelligence arm, with, in descending rank order, Mr. Terrific, Amanda Waller, Thinker, King Faraday, Tommy Jagger, and Count Vertigo. So the way this works is because it's a chess kind of motif. Mr. Terrific is king, is the White King. Amanda Waller is the White Queen. Bishops, rooks, knights, etc. Now, the black arm of the organization is the operations team, and it includes Talib Beni Khalid, Sasha Bordeaux, Shen Li Po, Jessica Midnight, Beatrice DaCosta, and Mademoiselle Marie. Also part of this story are the Outsiders, which at this time includes Captain Boomerang, the son of the original Captain Boomerang, Katana, Metamorpho, Grace, Thunder, and their leader, Nightwing. As the story begins, Checkmate is kidnapping the Outsiders because the Outsiders are playing fast and loose with morality, defeating bad guys, but not terribly concerned with the effects of their actions. Checkmate is able to capture them all except Nightwing. Nightwing tries to contact the others, but he can only get through to overhear Grace and Thunder getting abducted. He knows that the Outsiders are in trouble. He breaks into Checkmate headquarters in the Swiss Alps and accosts the Black Queen, Sasha Bordeaux. This has been her plan all along, to capture Nightwing, to get him to come to her. She resists him, and he rambles around headquarters, kicking, punching, exploding things, causing, wreaking havoc on the place. He frees Grace, and the pair wreak some more havoc around the headquarters before they're finally captured and brought to a meeting room to be reunited with the other Outsiders. Checkmate wants the Outsiders to do an op on Oolong Island off the west coast of North Korea. This is that is the kind of one of the headquarters of Intergang, evil organization, who had collected a group of brilliant minds, like Dr. Cyclops, T.O. Morrow, etc., which caused World War III. That's a problem. Intergang went into hiding on Oolong Island as their last remaining stronghold. Checkmate wants the Outsiders to go to Oolong Island and neutralize Intergang. Nightwing resists the idea, but they tell him that the UN Security Council wants to shut the Outsiders down, but if they do this op, they'll be left to their own devices. The Outsiders reluctantly agree and head with some of the Checkmate technical team to Oolong Island by air. They are attacked before they reach the island by a giant fish monster. Thunder is able to defeat the beast by changing her density, which is her superpower, one of her superpowers, and crushes him and shockwaves him, or both, I think. It hurts, he's in trouble, and he's out of the picture. That was quick. So Count Vertigo, Katana, and Metamorpho stay with the ship. Everyone else heads onto the island, and the folks on the island, they split up into a support team and an infiltration team. Nightwing, Bordeaux, Boomerang, and Mademoiselle Marie are on the infiltration team. Grace, Thunder, Fire, and T.O. Morrow are on the support team. The infiltration team heads into the jungle, and Bordeaux's Omak Tech calibrated eyeball sees an infrared heat signature coming from a hatch in the ground. It's locked and alarmed, and Mademoiselle Marie has the hologram character Thinker, releases him from his box, and he goes down and unlocks the hatch. The team goes into the tunnels below and finds the data hub surrounded by Intergang staff. They're able to take out the Intergang guys and go to upload the data into the Checkmate servers. However, a computer virus gets downloaded instead, which sets off all the alarms at Checkmate. The data starts flowing into the Intergang servers instead of the other way around. Intergang knew that they were coming. Checkmate has to shut down and reboot their servers to protect their data, abandoning the infiltration team who are being attacked by robots. Thinker is able to download the Intergang data as the team fights off these robots. However, the virus is sublimating his code too, and he has a short time before he is compromised. Nightwing calls for the ship to back them up. The support team also realizes there is trouble and goes to help. Thinker goes back in his box, and Nightwing blows an electromagnetic pulse that disables the horde of security robots. The team tries to find a way out. At the surface, Thunder blasts through the ground and creates an escape route for the infiltration team, while the rest of the support team defend the exit from attacking drones. A force field blocks the escape route, and they are attacked by crab robots. Vertigo is able to fly down the hall and free the team, except Nightwing, Boomerang, and Bordeaux, who are captured and taken to a North Korean medical facility. The rest of the team assembles on the ship, which fights off jets, including a living jet where the pilot and plane are one, called the Immortal Man in Darkness. Chang Tzu, the evil egg creature known as Egg Fu, is running things at this medical facility, and not as dead as everyone thought. He had been thought to have been killed by Black Adam. Egg Fu wants to investigate the Omak Brother Eye Tech in Bordeaux's eye, and also the Speed Force that Boomerang had previously. The pair will have to be awake for the procedures, and it is going to hurt. Back at Checkmate headquarters, the team confers with the Chinese ambassador and convinces him to call off the fighter's jets, provided the team keeps to this facility. The White King, Mr. Terrific, gets into a jet and leaves headquarters and heads to the island. Egg Fu is medically torturing Boomerang and Bordeaux. Boomerang is returned to a cell with Nightwing. The part Omak Bordeaux gets disassembled by the over-easy fiend, but the nano-parasites she is infested with continue to reconstruct her. The rest of the team breaks into the facility to rescue their comrades. They fight off some what look to be bone monsters. Mr. Terrific goes to infiltrate the facility too, when he is joined by a surprise guest, the Batman. The remaining players converge on the facility. Nightwing had swallowed a torch before they left for this op, and he spits it up so he and Boomer can get out of the cell. They fight off baddies inside trying to get out, while those outside fight baddies trying to get in. Nightwing and Boomerang find the operating room where Batman is attending to the battered and defaced Bordeaux. Egg Foo is gone. The team gets away, and Nightwing tells Batman that the Outsiders are a good team, but he just isn't the leader to really bring them together. He hints to Batman that he should take the team over. They mull over the idea of the team called Batman and the Outsiders. The end. Well, Chris and I are going to talk about our feelings about the story after these words from some of our friends.
Hello. Do you enjoy movie scores? Do you like science fiction? Do you like fantasy? And do you like movies?
Everything's under control. Situation normal.
What happened?
Had a slight weapons malfunction, but everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
Well, I have a podcast for you. Soundtrack Alley. It's a podcast where I take you on a journey through the time of my childhood and beyond to give you a glimpse into the world of movies, science fiction, fantasy, and other films that touch me on a personal level. You'll also enjoy interviews from film composers from famous movies from the past or even current times. Enjoy the interaction I have with guests on my show every so often, and check out other shows that share and guest spots. So sit back, relax, and let the soundtrack world wash over you, and check out Soundtrack Alley. You'll love it.
Welcome back. So, Chris, what did you think about Checkout?
Gerry, Checkout reminded me of the 90s when we were in a comic book period where books seemed to be really mass-produced, stories tend to be really overblown, and I just got that vibe here. I think somehow the writing and the art, this more seemed like it would have been a great screenplay, but once translated into the comic book medium, this just really felt overblown in a lot of places. There are some characters I liked. There are some characters I had forgotten about, and I wonder why, because they didn't leave an impression. But so many things in this seemed so overblown. Initially you mentioned that one by one the Outsiders were being kidnapped. Now, you would think this would be done very covertly and very secretly, and not enough to draw a lot of attention. But in the one scene when Boomerang is being kidnapped, he's kidnapped by Beatrice DaCosta, who's also AKA Fire. And it's at this bar, and we get this gratuitous bit where she's coming on to him in a bar, and we see a panel where he's looking at her cleavage, and then he gets injected, and then he's easily taken out. Okay, I'm with you so far. But then we have Katana, who is, of all places, she's jogging on the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. She comes upon this guy who stumbles and falls, and she tries to give him aid, where she's subsequently sprayed with an anesthetic spray. Now, you'd think, okay, we're just going to spirit her into a van or something, or, have some EMTs in disguise take her. No. This is, you can't do that. She gets literally kicked off the Golden Gate Bridge and lands in this passing barge down below. I'm going, what am I reading here? I mean, and this is a comic book, but this is so comic booky for a comic book. I thought this was really, really overblown with the dialogue and the setups. Things transition nicely, but overall, I think things were just way over the top here. This had elements of being just too cliche for its own good, with the battles, the way the characters were drawn. I tried to get into this. I thought some of this was really, really juvenile. I would have thought I would have maybe appreciated this when I was 12, but even then, am I insulting myself at a 12-year-old intelligence in some places? Jerry, I had so many problems with this here and there, and I'm trying to find some positives. The artwork was good in places, especially with the splash pages, because when you have so many characters involved, you're going to have to include them in all of these spreads. What I did like is, in some margins, we had the introductions of the players involved, with a little face and who they were, their code name, and what type of operative they were. But the pluses just couldn't outweigh the minuses for me. How about you? What were your overall impressions?
So my first read through this, now, just to kind of ground everybody as to where I'm coming from, I am not familiar with many of these characters at all. Of course, I know Nightwing, I know Boomerang, and Chris and I, we had discussed this Boomerang, Owen, Boomerang's son of Boomerang. We've talked about him before, so, of course I'm familiar with Katana, but some of these other characters I have heard of, some of them I'd never heard of. And it's not my kind of story, not the kind of thing I usually read, so like many beginners in this, I was very lost. There are a lot of characters, so they have real names, superhero names, project code names. So the Checkmate team has names like White Queen's Bishop, Black Queen, Rook, all this stuff. And they would refer to each other as anything at any time, and I didn't know who anybody was. So I was very, very confused. I'm not familiar with Checkmate at all. I mean, I know about Suicide Squad, of course, and but not with this kind of incarnation. And I'm not an Outsiders fan either. I'm not a reader of those books. So I had to go through this very slowly, and it was very frustrating. And at first, the way it's laid out in the Checkmate book is that they have the boxes with, as you mentioned, Chris, with the faces and their names and, whether they were a white bishop or whatever. And at first I thought that I didn't realize that they were on the same team. I thought, as in chess, black and white were against each other, and it made it extra confusing.
Oh, that's a great point.
So, are they against the Outsiders? Why? And it was just a frustrating read. Now, going just to make one more comment about the boxes, Siskel and Ebert, back in the day, used to say that if you see a movie poster and it has boxes of all of the stars in it, it's going to be a bad movie. So I was a little taken aback, and so that was a problem for me getting into the story. I did think that as it progressed finally, I mean, things like, why didn't they just ask the Outsiders to do this? Why did they have to go through 2 issues of kidnapping and cajoling? Why didn't they say, hey, we got this problem, want to fix it? The Outsiders would have been, yes, let's go and get them, They're just creating this antagonism that I didn't think was, realistic. The stakes, as it progresses, especially with, Bordeaux and Boomerang, with Egg Foo, that did freak me out. I thought that was really effective as to, him taking apart Bordeaux, to get to the OMAC tech. So I did think the stakes were good, but it was just really, really difficult to get through.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of points I want to harp on. Jerry, great call out to the Siskel and Ebert and the movie poster reference, because I did not know that, but, I'm thinking in my mind, as a kid, where I think in the 70s, late 70s, where that was sort of phased out, at least in my memory. Yeah, I remember posters such as that, and I remember even one for a ad for the first Star Trek movie, where I distinctly remember where they had the little boxes of the character head and who they play, and that appeared in comic book ads back then, and how Star Trek was, it did lead to sequels, but how it could have been a much better film. Yeah, great point. And just things that were out of nowhere. We mentioned Egg Foo before, and for the readers, where do I start? Egg Foo first appeared way back, I want to say this was Wonder Woman number 158, way back in 1965. Wow. And imagine, if you will, a very stereotypical character with unfortunate stereotypes, speaking with a Charlie Chan accent, having this big, literally humongous egg with a face on the side of it, with a Snidely Whiplash mustache, and speaking in this character. And I think he was created by Bob Kanigher. I think Ross Andru and Mike Esposito drew the issues back then, which was, back in the mid '60s, there was this huge spy craze, and Egg Foo was this Chinese communist agent who was doing this, and you have to put yourself in this. Of the times, I guess, is a polite way to put it. With this. The character has gone through a few incarnations. I originally liked the character because I embraced the silliness, and I think this was something. Whenever he appeared, I kind of rolled my eyes, like, oh yeah, it's Egg Foo again. All right, now he's sort of like this diabolical character, but I don't know where we've landed with him in the present day, because I think he recently in Harley Quinn.
He's in Harley, yeah.
He popped up there.
They call him Eggy, and he's a helpful character. He's a nice guy. Very different than here.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm glad the character's still around. So I respect that. But we got a giant fish monster, and we got these battles. And one of the points I think you made in your notes was like, why did they have to kidnap the members of the Outsiders instead of the direct approach? Just thought, some of these things just did not make sense, at the surface value. And it was just, things were done just to be so overblown and over the top. I was just very perplexed.
Yeah. There's an awful lot of background that is constantly being referred to. That, Boomer had been working with Amanda Waller in secret. Fire had some past bad behavior that was, part of a couple of conversations. Nightwing and Madame Bordeaux have a history with Batman. They had the Immortal Man in Darkness, this jet pilot that's combined with the pilot. There's a lot of... the dialogue is kind of, invested in a rich world, but if you don't know the world, it makes, you're kind of scratching your head as you're going through it.
Yeah, and you bring up the dialogue. I thought Grace and Thunder's dialogue, particularly Thunder's dialogue, was just so overblown. And it almost got to be sort of like, I know we're trying to give this character an identity with respect, but it just sometimes in places did not come off well. Gerry, we had a huge list of characters in this, both with the Outsiders and both with Checkmate. Were there any characters that stood out to you that you liked? Were there any characters that you just thought you didn't like?
Yeah, I like this version of Boomerang. I think he's snarky and kind of stupid, and will just kind of speak his mind even when he shouldn't. I like that. The Madame Bordeaux thing was intriguing to me, as was the Thinker. And some of these things I think I would like to learn a little bit more about, because I really don't know anything about them. So how about yourself? Any particular characters?
Well, I like Mademoiselle Marie, and I first discovered this character, back in the house ads, when I bought old comic books from the 60s, and she was like this war character with a French character who fought, I presumed, in World War II, and I got, material Catch as Catch Can, around Detective Comics numbers, I want to say 501, 502. There was a mystery involving Alfred where the character was killed off, and then they had to solve the mystery about that, but now the character's been resurrected. And good supporting character. Sasha Bordeaux, this was somebody that introduced way back in Detective Comics number 751. She was created by Greg Rucka. Initially, when she came on board, she was bodyguard to Bruce Wayne. second in command Lucius Fox, and eventually she became suspicious of Bruce and all his things, and then I think his identity was discovered. But then we get to some really convoluted stuff when Checkmate appears, and then we had Final Crisis, and then she gets infected with the OMAC virus, and all of a sudden she's got these powers when Egg Foo's examining her, and she's got this body enhancement, and she's got these ocular implants, and you don't know what's going on with your skin and all this, and it just gets to me a little bit overcomplicated. It's a very good character, and I liked her initial depiction, but I think sometimes you can override a character to the fault where you just get lost and you don't know who this character is anymore as she continually progresses. I'm not against a character progressing, but I don't want it sacrificed to the point where I get lost. I really get lost. I think there is a current incarnation of her. She's in the DC Comics Rebirth, and she's on the Wonder Woman title now. So I think they took a step back. They've eliminated some things, and they've tweaked it a little bit. So I don't know if there's still some evil AI going on in there, but I'm glad she's a part of the DCU, but I just want it a little bit not quite as overblown here. One of the things, before I forget, when I do our shows, I try to recommend if there's some things that a parent may want to watch out for. I did mention earlier there was a sequence where Boomerang looks at the cleavage of Beatrice DaCosta. There is a lot when these characters are being examined. They have very little clothing. Now, nothing is quite revealed, but it did look a little... I don't know if I want to say R-movie-ish, but certainly a PG-13 here. I think some of the things were just teetering, if you will. So you may want to do a double look at this if you plan on getting this for a kid. Yeah,
I think for what you're referring to when she's on the operating table, and if anybody has seen The Fifth Element, I think it's very similar to how Leilu was laying with the things over, strategically placed, but, there's plenty there. There's also a scene where Grace is in a hospital gown and, you can see her backside. And there's no really good reason for it other than, oh, look at this. There's not really a plot point, I wouldn't say. So nothing really overly sexualized, but, a little bit.
Let's see. I'm trying to see my notes if I had anything else. Just one comment I had. This takes us to Outsiders number 49, and as Gerry said, we've got Batman appearing at the very end of the story. I think this run of the title stops at number 50, and then the title starts with a new number 1, Batman and the Outsiders once again. And in that incarnation... Gosh, how long did that run? I want to say we're in Batman and the Outsiders, started in the 80s, but here we are again. This was I think it ran for about 3-4 years from 2007 to 2010, 2011 maybe, and it didn't run too long. But, I always liked that concept of Batman with his own little crew, of teams. But this was really weird. I think one of the things I did like with this was the depiction of Nightwing. He is a capable and formidable leader, and sometimes I forget when reading his current title or other books featuring Nightwing, I forget just how essential his leadership skills were, which were initially established back when he was the head of the New Teen Titans. And we see his strategic skills come into play. There was a scene where we had Deathstroke when he was trying to take out the members with the tar mark off in the Traitor story, and Dick was always the toughest to capture. He was always the last one, and here again it was the same bit. So hey, I really like the way we had some good character depictions here. Definitely. If you're a fan of Amanda Waller, she's running around in this being her typical Amanda Waller self. I'm trying to remember if there's any other characters that I liked. King Faraday was in this. He's an old spy character from DC Comics Silver Age. I don't think he really had a lot to do here. No. We had Mr. Terrific running around. Again, a good character. I don't think he really had a lot to do here. Metamorpho, one of the more powerful characters, and he's left on the plane for some reason. When they do this with this covert operas, and I think he'd be the first one I'd want
to take him.
Yeah, absolutely. And the most powerful guy, and you're leaving him on board this. So what's up with that? So just some weird things here. You mentioned the Thinker. I thought that was a good incarnation. who am I leaving out? Count Vertigo?
Yeah.
I had nothing really there for me.
Thunder and Grace, anything?
Thunder and Grace, anything. I thought they were kind of a little stereotypical. They're decent characters, but I really didn't like how the way they were fleshed out. Mm-hmm. And that was about it. Like you, I did like this incarnation of Boomerang too. Again, to repeat, that is the son of the Digger Harkness character. Right, so
this is Owen.
Yes, correct.
So how would you rate this book?
Gerry, this is right down the middle. This is very, very standard material. I think it started with an ambitious script. Mm-hmm. It started with an ambitious, just went way out of hand for the sake of being way out of hand. Mm-hmm. I'm giving it like a 2.5. This is just the artwork and the writing certainly weren't bad. This was not the worst comic I've ever read. But to me, this came off as being quite average for what was involved. The inexplicable fish monster popping, there's so many things, so many head scratching moments, but you just go with it. Yeah. It really was, to me, was evocative of a time that was in the mid '90s to me, where things were just from a different period with the artwork and the plot, and this just didn't seem to hold up for me as a story. So I'm going to give this a 2.5 out of 5. How about you?
I think I'll give it a 2.5 as well, and with kind of an asterisk. So, where I'm coming from is I'm not an Outsiders fan. I'm not a Checkmate fan. I don't know a lot of these characters. So, and to be really honest, even after reading this is not something that would inspire me to go back and research some of these characters because they were that good. However, not everybody approaches these the same way as I do. People may be familiar with these characters more so than I am, and this might be interesting. I mean, it is complicated. The organizations are kind of complicated, and I know a lot of folks like that. So that's why I'm kind of qualifying my 2.5. That's for me. For my enjoyment of this book, was for me. It was a good story at the end, but I was very frustrated getting to where it started picking up, and I could start to appreciate the story a little more. Now, I don't think this is, if you're an Outsiders fan, a Batman and the Outsiders fan, I guess this is an important story to read. Although I think you could probably pick it up without going through this. Pick up, the fact that, all right, Batman and the Outsiders are kind of getting together through Nightwing. So, except I wouldn't really recommend this book for anyone that wasn't interested in either the Outsiders or maybe a big Amanda Waller fan, which I know people are. So, how about yourself? Would you think this is a must read, or who would you recommend this for?
Well, I would second your recommendation, but for myself, I just can't recommend it. I thought it was just too average. I mean, this is a book you could probably find easily on the cheap, but there might be other things worthy of your time. Yeah. Usually, for me, when I get to this part of the show, and it's something that I don't recommend, I try to spin it and think of something that some part of the creative team, be it the artists or the writers, put out there that I did like. So I'm going to do that now. I recently reread Judd Winnick's Green Arrow, Black Canary stuff that came out around the same time period, and then towards the later part of the 2000s and 2009s and stuff like that. So if you could find on the cheap the trade paperbacks, Green Arrow, Black Canary Wedding Album, which was a softcover, Green Arrow, Black Canary Family Business, with the art was done by Cliff Chang, and it was really some great stuff there. And then it was Green Arrow, Black Canary, subtitle A League of Their Own. Now, if you can find those for a good buy, or if you can find those issues under cover price, I thought those were really good reads, so I would really go for that. And for Greg Rucka, I would point you to those recent work that he did over on Wonder Woman in the Rebirth material, which recently came out in trade paperback. Or you can find those single issues probably at a decent fair to price. So those are ones that I would recommend right now, because these are both talented writers. Yeah. Great stuff. They usually don't let me down, but here in this book, I thought this was kind of average, I hate to say.
Yeah. So I think we're agreed on this one. So
yep.
So Bat Books for Beginners is part of the BatmanUniverse.net network. We offer all the Batman-based weekly comic book reviews, news, and some great podcasts, including the flagship comic podcast, Everyone Loves the Drake, Batgirl to Oracle, which you know something about, Chris, and so
yes,
many
I do.
more. If you like what we offer, please consider donating to us at the TBU Patreon account. You can find a link to our Patreon account on the BatmanUniverse.net website. Now, Chris, what is it about Batgirl to Oracle that you know about?
Well, thank you very much, Jerry. You can find me on the Batgirl to Oracle show, where I do a segment on that show where I review the Batman Adventures title, which was based on the 90s animated series. And right now, most recently, I reviewed the first issue, which featured the Penguin. Had a good time with it. I also am incorporating a new feature within the segment called Night Watch, where I examine if or not there is a shipper alert to be found in the current issue of Nightwing, which is something on Stella's radar and my radar too, which we both have never outwardly shared this communication, but we just kind of keep this contained, and it's sort of like, the nod, wink, and nothing said, but it's both sort of understood, so I had a great time on there. Again, the show Batgirl to Oracle, hosted by the magnificent and talented Stella, where she reviews Batgirl titles, the Batgirl and Batgirl Birds of Prey. Jerry, I think you know something about Batgirl Birds of Prey. Do you not, sir? Is it possible for listeners to find your written reviews on Batgirl Birds of Prey somewhere?
It is possible. I review the current Batgirl and Birds of Prey comic book on the BatmanUniverse.net website, so you can go out there. I also cover Mother Panic. I've been doing Harley and Ivy Meet Betty and Veronica, so I do some written reviews out there, and you can head out to the BatmanUniverse.net website and check out Chris on Batgirl to Oracle and my written reviews. So you can also find us out on Twitter. Where are you, my friend?
Thank you. I can be found on Twitter at BTO and Batbooks. Again, my Twitter handle is at BTO and Batbooks. And I like to tweet a lot of nostalgic things. I'll tweet about what I read over the weekend. Usually these are old books that I have. And sometimes I'll tweet out a TV listing on Saturday mornings of TV shows that I remember, called TV Shows of Yore. Some things just very nostalgic, some things that strike my fancy, or just little opinions, whatnots I have. And then we also live tweet during Saturday nights during the MeTV lineup. I get on board with Wonder Woman, then we live tweet during Svengoolie, and then we stick around. I do some for Batman. Star Trek is when I sort of start to fade off there, but we have some great exchanges. Jerry, I know you love doing this. Where can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me at Professor Frenzy. That's Professor Frenzy. And I do all kinds of things out on Twitter. I do cover my favorite DC comic books, as well as I do some indie comic book reviews and different things like that. I do some Dark Shadows tweeting because I'm a kind of a Dark Shadows addict, and there are like-minded lunatics out on Twitter that sit through the hundreds and thousands of episodes of Dark Shadows. Oh. So, and we just love Chris and I and Clinton Robeson, who does the Coffee and Comics podcast. He goes out there and he's doing he's tweeting on the MeTV Svengoolie night. Last night was Godzilla versus Mothra, which I love that movie.
Great stuff.
That's terrific. So we have a great time. So, feel free to come out and join Chris and I and Clinton and the gang out there. It's a lot of fun. So we also do a lot of other, listen to a lot of other podcasts and have some things we listen to that we really like. How about yourself? What are you listening to, Chris?
Well, there's one, too. I wanted to give a special shout-out to Professor Allen, and you can find him on Twitter at relatively_geek. Mm-hmm. Now, that's part of the Relatively Geeky family of podcasts, including some of my favorite podcasts, including the Comics Reading Journal, the Quarter Bin Podcast, and the Short Showcase, and Dorkness to Light. Some of the latter feature his daughter, Em, who was a recent guest on the Batgirl to Oracle podcast. Yeah. Now, I got to tell you, Jerry and I were honored to have this podcast, Bad Books for Beginners, to have been nominated on Professor Allen's list of 2017 podcast awards.
That's right.
Yeah, Bad Books for Beginners was nominated in the category Where Have You Been All My Life award. Now, this category was for a show that started in or before 2016, but Professor Allen didn't start listening to or even have heard of in some cases until 2017. Mm-hmm. this podcast, we were nominated along with the excellent company of Comic Reflections, Comics on History, White Rocket Entertainment, but we lost out to the fine podcast Pulp to Pixels podcast. So
It's a good one.
It's a good one. And while the saying goes, it's just an honor to be nominated. Hey, I feel very, very flattered that this show was acknowledged, and I feel very proud of this achievement. So that was really, really good.
Definitely. Thank you, Professor Allen.
Yeah. Now, boy, there's also the Comics Treadmill that we listen to with Word Comics History. That's Chris Sheehan at Ace Comics, who's also there with at Reggie, and they discuss classic comics. And, boy, they put on a good show.
They sure do. I love the voices they do. It's terrific.
Yep.
That's very entertaining. Now, we're also listening to Randy Andrews, who does Soundtrack Alley in Gen 13. He just did Conan the Destroyer soundtrack, and that was a really good show. So
Absolutely.
I recommend recommend that one. We also, of course, listen to everything that Darren and Ruth Sutherland put out, which is they're quite prolific. They do Warlord Worlds, Xenozoic Xenophiles, Trekker Talk, and also Sensational Sleuths, which is their latest, where they cover different detectives from history. And Chris and I did an appearance on Warlord Worlds, where we discussed Mike Grell's Batman Mask with them, which was a wonderful experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, then we also, the aforementioned Clinton Robeson also does Coffee and Comics, which is a very, very good podcast. High fans of the show, yeah.
Also, Long Box Crusade with Pat Sampson and his buddies do a really good podcast there. And I've also been listening to Wonder Woman Warrior for Peace. She covers Golden Age, Silver Age, the TV show, just a wide array, modern Wonder Woman comics. And I really recommend for fans of Wonder Woman to check that one out. That's a good one.
Yeah, those latter two that you mentioned are very outstanding shows. The Long Box Crusade with Pat Sampson. When I tweet and give them a like, my handle is B2 on Batbooks, and they always get into this Bachman Turner Overdrive riff. It just really cracks me up, and I really appreciate that, where they give a little special shout out to there. You also mentioned Wonder Woman Warrior for Peace. That's a show I like. That's hosted by Angela. She does a really thorough job with looking at books in the Golden Age and doing some excellent synopsises of the stories and the TV show going in chronological sequence. And God bless Angela. She has been so consistent putting her show out on a monthly basis, which covers a lot of material. So great shout outs to them.
Yeah, terrific.
Now, Jerry, we also got some likes and retweets, if I can give those a mention.
Oh, yes.
Okay, we also, some of these were the aforementioned that we had on likes and retweets on our last episode. We got from, the Long Box Crusade at Long Box Crusade. Again, a shout out to Pat, Jared Albrecht, and the Yard Sale Artist and the gang. He can also be found at Yard Sale Artist. Trekker Talk at Trekker Talk, the aforementioned Sutherlands. We also got a like from Kristen Clark at Chris Doodle79. Again, the aforementioned Chris Sheehan at Ace Comics. Reggie at Reggie. Paul Shanley at Paul Shanley. Jeff Hunter at Jeff Hun, 349-11855. Adam Stabelli at Adam of Gotham. Nightstar 357 at CCaps 357. Let's see. Moon Fairy Ghost Hippie at Zanzicow. Nice. Yes. Clinton Robeson of the aforementioned Coffee and Comics podcast fame. You can find him on Twitter at Coffee Comics Blog. Comics in the Golden Age at Comics in the Golden Age. And the Batman Universe at Batman Universe. Thank you very much, guys.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. So,
now, if I somehow overlooked you, please drop me a line on Twitter, where my handle again is at B2 on Batbooks, or you can send me an email. The email address for me is bruce.wayne@gothamcity.us. Thank you guys very much, and gals, for your support.
Thanks so much. So that's all Chris and I have for today. Please join us. I think, Chris, it's going to be in 3 weeks when Chris and I will cover Robin, the Big Leagues. My name is Jerry.
And I'm Chris.
And thank you for listening to Bat Books for Beginners.
24 hours to go. Bat Books for Beginners. I can't wait till time to download Bat Books for Beginners. Google Play and Stitcher, such a wide array. Here are Chris and Gerry to make your back book pay. Hear their rhymes and reasons if they are okay. Oh, 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 oh. Bat, 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 bat. Bat books for beginners. Bat, 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 bat. Bat books for beginners.